Hey friends, welcome to Rooted in Rhythm, the podcast for women who are ready to ditch the birth control and hormone chaos and live aligned in the way their bodies were truly designed. We're your hosts. I'm Becky, a registered nurse and FDN practitioner.
And I'm your co-host, Emily, a fellow registered nurse and a fertility awareness educator.
Together, we're here to guide you through real conversations about hormone healing, nervous system regulation, cycle syncing, faith, and functional labs, without the fluff, the shame, or the overwhelm. Whether you're dealing with painful periods, post-birth control symptoms, or just feel like your body is fighting against you,
this is your space to slow down, get curious, and heal from the root. We blend science and soul in a way that honors your whole self, body, mind, and spirit. You're welcome here, whatever your background.
So grab your tea or your mushroom coffee, take a deep breath, and let's get rooted in rhythm. Today, we are starting our very first podcast, and we are just going to tell you guys our stories because I think there are so many women out there that have similar stories. Why did we decide to do this podcast?
That is such a question. I'll actually start just for the people who are listening. A friend of mine sent me this long audio message, and she was just like, hey, I met this girl at a retreat, and she was sharing with me what she's been doing and her passion for women's health. And I just think you guys would really collaborate well together. And I opened up my Instagram and saw a direct message from you in my inbox. So yeah, we ended up connecting on social media, Becky and I, and we met up for coffee, or not coffee because we don't drink coffee. But anyway, that's beside the point. We met up.
We'll talk about that in another time.
But yeah, we could not stop talking because we share such a similar passion for women's health, for holistic wellness. We're both registered nurses, and we both really feel and understand on a deep level the importance of understanding the human body and how we were created and
how we were designed.
Yes, and how understanding that creation can actually end up helping us to understand our creator. And, even though we are really, really rooted in our faith here, we want to make sure that anybody who's listening to this podcast, if they don't share the same faith background as us,
that they feel welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be mentioning our faith and things like that here because it's so important to us and it's so rooted in what we know and what we want to share. But ultimately, we just want people to come here, learn their bodies, become more health literate, and have a voice in their healthcare decisions.
Emily, what led you to become so passionate about women's health and hormones?
Kind of a long story. To kind of start off with our nursing journey, I am a registered nurse. I have some experience in medical surgical nursing. Loved it. I got to know so much about the human body. I got to know so much about the soul of a person and how everything is so connected. And my favorite part of that was really just being able to connect with someone. In med-surg, it's craziness, and any nurse listening to this, they're like, how did you have time to talk to your patient? And it's like, well,
I mean, you could go to a hospital with 5 patients at a time, but sometimes 6 or 7 patients on a shift. And
just crazy.
If you think about rounding every 2 hours, I mean, I had 0 time to provide the holistic, mind, body, spirit care that I really thought was the vocation of nursing. And I really just felt like I was slinging meds at people.
Yes, that's unfortunately what it becomes, is that we go into nursing because we want to heal. And we have these hearts that want to serve and be with a person and share their life, share their suffering, and take a little burden off of them. And that's what we get excited for in nursing school. And then
especially as a baby nurse, you go in all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and you're like, I'm ready to go save the world now. And then shit hits the fan.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, crap. Okay. But, it was still good in a sense. But I really was recognizing there's got to be something else here. I ended up feeling super called to women's health. And it was mostly around the realm of having this veil almost lifted from my eyes of the female reproductive cycle, the menstrual cycle, which I like to refer to as the ovulation cycle.
Which actually is the fifth vital sign that nobody talks about.
It is totally a vital sign of health. But I started to recognize this deep need in society for women to actually understand their bodies, and for doctors and nurse practitioners to understand women's bodies and to not just shove them off as if, this is something we can just erase for now.
And we'll put a Band-Aid on it.
Yep, it is crazy. So I started getting really passionate about that and ended up entering into labor and delivery nursing. Not at all what I thought I wanted to do. I did not go into nursing and be like, oh, I want to be a labor and delivery nurse. Yes. I totally wanted to be geriatric nurse. I have such a heart for the elderly. I still do. It's like such a passion of mine.
When they tell their stories of the good old days.
There's also a really huge vulnerability in the female population. And there's a suffering and there's a pain in women that is not noticed because they're thinking that it's normal to suffer.
Or they're told it's normal. Like, even though it is common, it's not normal. And we're trying to change that vernacular because the doctors don't say it's common because they have the solution. They say it's common because they don't. They just have the Band-Aid fix. And so because they don't feel trained enough to offer a holistic solution, all they have is, okay, well, you can go on birth control. And was that what happened to you?
It's what happened to me. And it's not the doctor's fault. And I recognize that. It's a very systematic issue at this moment. And hopefully with time, it'll change and more doctors will start to see the beauty of the menstrual cycle and the importance of it. It happened to me when I was a teenager. I was put on birth control for acne by my dermatologist. The more I open up about that and the more I have opened up about it over the past few years, woman after woman has the same story. Or, oh yeah, I wasn't having my period for a few months. I was really irregular and they told me I was at risk for cancer. So they put me on birth control. I've had multiple women tell me that. But yeah, that's what happened to me. And I ended up getting really angry, realizing that that was not what was necessary. That really after menarche, which is period number 1, it takes time for a young woman going through puberty for her body to regulate, for that menstrual cycle to become what we would expect to see in peak reproductive years. But yeah, I got really passionate about all these things, ended up recognizing the deep need in society for a change, and really recognizing and feeling on my heart and in my spirit and my prayer that God was calling me to be an advocate for women, to speak the truth, of like, we were made good. We think that we have to live up to an expectation of what beauty is. And the problem with that is that we are beautiful just because we were made as women. Our hair, our makeup, our clothes have nothing to do with our beauty. They really don't. It's our heart. It's our body.
It's our virtue. And yet they're so overlooked and unappreciated.
I have this deep belief that once women come to know their body truly as it was created to function and know all the ebbs and flows of their hormones and what is happening at certain times of their cycle, they'll end up growing in respect for themselves. And I'm really passionate about that. So to wrap up my story here, I'll just say I worked as a labor and delivery nurse for nearly 2 years and was not ever planning on leaving, but my health had really drastically declined because I was working day shifts and night shifts, sometimes in the same week, kind of bouncing back and forth week to week, and there was no regularity. A lot of hospitals do 6 weeks days, 6 weeks nights, or 3 weeks days, 3 weeks nights, but on my unit, there was no regularity.
Did that wreck you?
It totally wrecked me. I did it. It was working for about a year and a half.
You did that for a year and a half. Oh, you are a trooper. I would have been like, out of there.
It was rough. I would have these crazy glucose swings in the middle of the night too, where I'd like want to just stuff my face with 5 chocolate bars. And it was crazy. My hormones were so dysregulated. I ended up receiving a diagnosis of PCOS and potentially endometriosis. Endometriosis can only be truly 100% diagnosed with laparoscopic procedure to really see if there's endometrial tissue outside of the uterus. But I've been tracking my cycle for a long time and I'd never had any signs of those things at all. And then all of a sudden I did. Wow. And I found myself in the hospital. I was taken via ambulance from a pregnancy center that I spend a lot of time at working with women.
What was your trigger?
It was excruciating, debilitating abdominal pain. I couldn't get off the floor. Gosh. I could barely breathe.
You'd almost think it's like an appendicitis. As nurses, we're just like, appendix.
I was like, the EMT walks in, I'm like, I have no rebound tenderness.
They're probably like, what? How does she know all this?
Who is this girl? But yeah, I was taken to the hospital. I was there for 10 hours and they couldn't really figure anything out. I met with OBs that I actually work with and they're awesome, really sweet people. But there was no discussion about here's how we go from here. Here's someone you can go to have a deeper look. Yeah, this was not normal, but here's what you can do. There was no discussion of that. Sorry, we can't figure out what's wrong. Send you on your way. No
Wow.
discussion about anything.
What was in your discharge paperwork? Was there anything like
nothing.
moving forward?
No, nothing. Just completely dropped the ball. There was no follow-up. And so to me, that was my turning point. I said, okay.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. I felt like that on the other side too, as a nurse, because you're having to discharge people who weren't ready or didn't have the right resources or just still didn't know what was going on. And I realized then that it's a revolving door of just get them in, get them out. And the system is so broken that it's not there to give you long-term healing. And when I would even try to offer that as a nurse, there was no time. I was wasting my energy. Like I could offer comfort and support and emotional support and advice, but even that put me in a difficult place. So
it's all part of the story. And it's like exactly what I needed to happen, because it made me realize that that's probably happening to other women. And during that time, I was actually in the middle of my certification to become a fertility awareness educator. And I realized I feel like I'm being called to go full force with being a FAE as a registered nurse. I took a few more months in that position, trying to change my schedule. I was trying really hard to get a little bit more regularity, maybe just straight days or maybe a PRN, which means as needed. I did not want to leave because I loved being a labor and delivery nurse. There were still definitely things that went on there in the labor and delivery realm in the teaching hospital that I did not agree with, but I really didn't want to leave. I still want to be back there. Like I still want to be a labor and delivery nurse. I unintentionally put my identity in that, I think, a little bit. And I sort of feel like I was forced out because of my health. But I am where I'm meant to be right now. And
he does that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He uproots
God does that.
where
Yes.
you're too deeply planted in the world. And he's like, nope,
you're controlling that too much, Emily. You need to let it go.
And rely on me a little bit.
Yes. Do we have so much more freedom when we just let go? You know, and so I let go and I'm like, okay, God, here you go.
I love that. We have so much more freedom when we just let go.
You know?
Yeah. Hey, it's like the monkey. Have you ever heard of how they hunt monkeys in Africa? They literally carve out a coconut and they put a banana in it. And the monkey reaches in, grabs the banana, but in order to pull his hand out to free himself from the coconut. Now, I think the coconut is probably like nailed to the ground or something, or to a tree. But in order to release his arm and be free as the hunters are closing in, he has to let go of the banana. And I feel that analogy on a deeper level with my spiritual journey, especially because, you know, it's when we let go of that banana that we think is our world. That banana is our job. That banana is our marriage. That banana is like our life that we've rooted so deeply in other things. And God's like, hey, your freedom is literally up this tree and away from these people. I love that analogy because I'm like, sometimes when I'm like rooting myself in the world again, and I'm saying, you know, I'm focusing on money or I'm focusing on, you know, something that my identity is rooted in that's not going to last, then I'm like, Becky, let go of the banana. Yeah. You got to be free because it's going to kill you. So sometimes it's not going to actually kill you, but like it's going to harm you in some way. And so God's like, just let go of the banana.
Yes, amen. Becky, tell us, I know I've heard a little bit about it, but I want to hear more. Your story, how you are here. You know, I know you're a registered nurse in FDNP. Tell our audience a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah. So funny enough, me and Emily like literally just met this year. So as you guys are learning our story, we are learning each other's story as well. We know a little bit, and we've definitely, like the moment I met Emily, like I just felt a spark, sparks fly, you know, that old Hannah Montana song. But yeah, I just felt like, wow, this girl, like our values, everything that we want to do for women aligns. And I just felt like, I don't know if you guys have ever felt this, but when you just meet somebody, you just feel chills and you're like, this is right. That's how I felt when I met Emily. And I've met so many holistic health practitioners that are amazing. I work with some and they're incredible, but this was like, it felt like divinely inspired. Just after 1 hour of talking, we were like, yes, we got to do this. So basically, my story starts with years of gut issues, skin issues. I remember growing up and I was a nervous wreck all the time. Anything that I would eat would just throw me off. I had severe allergies, eczema head to toe. I would go to the doctor and they would just give me steroid creams. Luckily, at the time, I knew to not put steroid creams on my face because steroid creams thin the skin over time. So my poor mother, she went through that, and her skin is so thin now because of just years of steroids. Steroids can be helpful in the moment, but they are always a Band-Aid fix. But then when you don't deal with the root, that's when it comes back with a vengeance. I mean, every time I'd go on prednisone, I would just have 3 good days and then all of a sudden come back even worse than before. And I said, what was the point of even doing this? Because just a little bit of relief and it's right back. And so I was constantly suffering. When my menstrual cycle started, I wasn't until I was 16. I was like really old. Like little girls are starting at age 9 now. So for me, I had been running cross country a lot. I was big, heavy into sports, soccer, just running my body to the ground. And I was having a blast. I mean, it was fun for me, but my cortisol and my hormones were all over the place. So I didn't start menstruating until 16 and didn't regularly menstruate until senior year of high school. Okay. And so I didn't even think about a cycle until then. I would see my 8th grade friends go to the bathroom every once in a while for pads or tampons. And I'd be like, oh, I don't have that. Every girl kind of has an onset of menses at different times. And sometimes it is genetic and sometimes it's lifestyle induced. But for me, it was definitely lifestyle because I was running a lot. I digress. Mainly ton of skin issues like mood swings galore. I would just get irritable around my luteal phase. This went on for years. There was absolutely no talk of nutrition or lifestyle or things that I could do. Then college hits. Everyone on my floor is on birth control. I was offered birth control for my acne at one point. Luckily, my mom said no because she actually looked at the risks. And nobody talks about the risks. And doctors, I don't give them much slack on that. They need to talk about the risks and benefits of birth control to women because so many women walk out of there with a prescription that they don't even know what it does to their bodies.
Absolutely. There's whole research on the National Cancer Institute's website. If you look up the nationalcancerinstitute.org, you can find all of the cancer risks associated with birth control.
People need to know that. For me, that was years of poor health being normalized. When I got a little bit older in college, we started having talk in the Catholic community about tracking your cycles and fertility awareness. That was amazing because I started really getting to know my 5th vital sign and man, was it out of whack. I mean, my cycles were like 10, 12 days and then I wouldn't even ovulate. It usually correlated with a stressful event in my life. And if there was any kind of nervous system dysregulation, that's when my cycles were all out of whack. So ladies, if you track your cycles, you can tell how you are really stressed because those girls that are like, I'm not stressed, I'm too blessed to be stressed. And then you're like, okay, but like, where are you holding that stress? Because your cycles are all out of whack. You're not answering phone calls. You're having some trauma responses. They're not resilient when things do come up. And so that is a sign of stress. People think stress means you feel the feeling of anxiety, but it can be physiological stress. It can be stress that is stored in the fascia of our muscles. If you've ever read The Body Keeps the Score, it's a big topic that we'll talk about. But
just as a side note for those listening, is not just tracking your period blood. The bleeding is the most obvious part of the cycle. It is not the most important. So, what I specialize in is helping women to identify cervical mucus biomarkers as As an in-depth look into what their estrogen and progesterone might be doing in their body without a urine or blood test. Really fascinating information that we can gather. And that is what we refer to charting biomarkers.
It can be temperature. I tracked my temperature for a while.
Even the menstrual blood is a biomarker.
Like if you have big heavy clots, people are like, I had this client come to me the other day and she was like, I don't really have much complaints about my cycle. And then when I dug deeper, it turns out she was having severe clotting and heavy bleeding, and also pain. The thing was, she thought it was normal. And I was like, wait a second, you didn't even so it's my job as a coach to dig further because so many women come to me without the full knowledge of what is actually healthy because they've just been told that a symptom is not a sign of communication from their body. A symptom is just something that we need to throw a medication at or just ignore for a little bit until it gets better. And so I just want to say that if you are having severely heavy bleeding and acne and, skin issues, hormonal weight gain that you just can't drop, or brain fog, mood swings, those are your body's messages to you. Let's just get rid of the word symptoms. We just need to take it out of the dictionary. Just talk about the way your body wants to communicate with you. And it wants to communicate by talking through symptoms. So when things are popping up and we're ignoring them, we're basically telling our body that it doesn't matter right now. And your body will listen to that and it will believe that. Over time, it will say, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't matter. Okay, well, here you go. Here's diabetes. Here's hypertension. Here's hormonal weight gain. Like, here's PCOS. It's not trying to hurt you. It's sending you messages. But if you don't listen, then it's going to have to result in disease or dysfunction in some way. So our job, my job, especially as a coach, is to mitigate as many stressors as possible. And that's what I'll talk about in my story. It got worse and worse. And then finally, I was living with my best friend in a house full of black mold. And that was the final straw. The amount of toxins that I was taking in on a daily basis for 2 years in that house was insane. And my liver was just done. It was like, I'm done. I'm just going to shout from the rooftops. So I got severe hives head to toe. I remember one day working on my lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is basically a superficial system in our bodies that carries toxins and disposes of them in the blood, and the blood filters through the liver and then it goes out through the kidneys. Well, the lymphatic system was basically taking my toxins in my body and it was just pushing them down, down, down. I watched as my severe eczema and my rash and all of these hives in the dermal layer, it was getting down that deep and it was going from my head and it was spreading down through my body. But yeah, my lymphatics was so blocked that I was like, okay, there's something in my body that wants to get out. And what is this? What is going on? I was going through a really hard time in my life and my health was just like tanked. And through all of that, I went down so many holistic rabbit holes because the doctors were just like, here's some prednisone. And I got so depressed on prednisone that it was at a point where I was becoming suicidal on prednisone. And steroids can do that to some people. And people don't talk about how that is a very adverse side effect. And you should taper off because steroids, you always have to taper. But man, I refuse to take prednisone ever again. And steroids in general, I was like, I'm done. Let's get to the root. Yeah. And so that's when I went down some holistic rabbit holes. I went down like thousands of dollars, tons of supplements. And I learned a lot along the way. I learned what to do, what not to do, what's good to try first. Like, for example, we were just talking about coffee enemas. And that is something that is very niche. And you have to be emotionally ready for a coffee enema. You can't just start that on day one of like, hey, you need to fix your liver. Here's a coffee enema. No, with my program, that's what I try to do is go as simple and easy transition as possible because this is, I mean, what we're doing here is long-term diet and lifestyle shifts. We're not trying to shock the body even more than it already has been shocked. And we're trying to really just nourish the nervous system. And what I needed to do was just get back to who I was, living in my truth, in the relationships in my life and just in my nervous system in general. And like going back to, I don't want other girls to have to fall into that. And I want to educate because maybe some little girl's out there like listening to this random podcast and she's like, oh my gosh, like my body isn't broken. The goal is to get women to learn about their bodies, learn about the truth of how they were made amazing and beautiful, get to where their periods are pain-free, get to where their cycles are not only regular, but they can understand when they're not regular. What does that mean? What can they do to support their body instead of feeling very disconnected? Like what you teach is tracking your cycle so that you can understand, is this an abnormal sign of ovulation? Maybe we can look into this. And food freedom is another thing. I had this client come to me who was starving herself of carbs, of calories, of everything. And she was gaining weight and she was like working out like 6 times a week. We decreased her exercise. We increased her calories and her carbs. And guess what? She started losing weight. We were supporting her hormones. We were supporting her body. When you're walking uphill with rocks in your backpack, the rocks are all of the things that you're doing to not support your body, to starve your body, to do what the world tells you to do. But then once we throw each rock out and we fill it with basically like nutrition and good things and good food, then you're walking uphill with something that nourishes you and not something that just weighs you down.
Gives you more energy. Yes.
Yes.
It's such a fascinating thing to get into. And I think, what this podcast will hopefully bring for women is just a deeper awareness of themselves, that they're not meant to live in a state of constant physiological stress that's coming from your body and not necessarily your mind. Solving those things, recognizing that we can get back to a place of wholeness and wellness. And what Becky was saying is beautiful. Her whole story, it is a story of how it is possible to go back to the basics of like how we're created, get rid of some of the things in our bodies that isn't natural, isn't
serving us in any way. Knowing when to choose things that don't serve us, because we're not going to tell women to just stop eating cake forever.
Right.
What we're trying to embrace is just the understanding of your body so that you can choose. We want to get women to a place of balance, mind, body, spirit healing, because then when you're in balance, then something that tips the teeter-totter a little bit is not going to set you off. But if you're already out of balance and somebody sits on your teeter-totter, look at that. That's just going to just fly you off into outer space. I mean, it's really about getting to what we call in nursing homeostasis, or balance in the body, mind, spirit. And when we work towards that, instead of doing all these extreme workouts or extreme diets or even extreme health practices, that's not what's going to get us to a place of understanding our body better, healing from the inside out. In the end, it might, but it might come at a cost.
Oh my gosh, Becky, this is so incredible. And it's funny, like you had mentioned just a minute ago, we've been getting to know each other recently and we think we know each other's stories, but then it's like, I've learned so much more about you.
So many more nuances.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what this collaboration is going to do and who this will bless. And I just want to share what God has given us and what he's blessed us with. I really think we're being called to explode this information from the rooftops. It's a grassroots movement right now in women's health, but let's make this the norm.
Yes.
And so I think
and share this with your friends and your family, because like any woman in your life, like share it with her. Even if you don't know if she's going through hormonal issues, she may be going through something that you don't even know about. There's a lot of women out there that hide a lot of their suffering. I was one of them. I was hiding a lot of suffering and I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who would understand. And so this podcast, like, please share it with women everywhere, share it on your stories, because we want women to be aware of this without having to be directly contacted. And, you know, sometimes that can scare people off and that can be like, oh, she thinks I'm broken. She thinks I need help. And that's really hard for women. So just like passively sharing this is a great way to connect and to reach women. And like you said earlier, we're trying to create waves with this. We're trying to create a tsunami. If you are in the holistic world, you feel like it's so saturated right now. It's not. It's like a tiny little wave right now, but like we want to create a tsunami that's going to overpower the ways that we have been going for so long and the broken system that we have been indoctrinated in for so long. And it doesn't mean that the medical system doesn't have a place. It truly does. And it does save lives. But this is a movement for the people who are in this chronic illness state of like, we need to get to the root and stop the Band-Aid fixes before it gets worse. We're going to be combining faith and functional medicine, but also our own experiences with traditional Western medicine and healthcare. We both have been in those experiences. I have been both a med-surg nurse, an ortho-trauma nurse, a postpartum nurse. I mean, I've travel nursed literally everywhere. And in just 5 years of nursing, I've seen hip replacements. I've seen babies being born. I've seen traumas from motorcycle accidents and people who've fallen off roofs and need to heal broken bones. And so there's a lot that Western medicine is really, really good at. There is just such a need that we're seeing. It does not fill. And that's the need that we're being called to fill. And that the reason why we started this podcast is because we just couldn't contain it within ourselves anymore.
Right.
We need to like let people know that this is something that we're passionate about, but we just need to let people know that there is another way. Our passion and our love for this, I think, is going to create waves. And the reason why I know is because I just feel the hand of God in this. Like I really do. And I don't say that often, but now I'm just like wholeheartedly, like I trust this and I trust that he brought us together for a reason. I'm so excited to give our listeners a lot of practical information to take with them, because I think learning about the truth of the beauty of our bodies should not cost $5,000.
No, absolutely not. And that's one thing Becky and I are also really passionate about, is we're not in this for the money. You know, we both took a really huge risk and we quit our jobs.
Leap of faith right there for both of us.
So huge. So we're obviously still registered nurses. You know, there are ways that you can practice your registered nursing outside of the hospital. And that's what we're doing. So of course we need an income, but at the same time, we're doing this out of passion. We're doing this because we want women to know their bodies. We want them to have a voice in their healthcare decisions and to heal from the inside out. Go back to the basics, discover who they are, discover their creator, you know, discover that they're loved, discover that they're beautiful, have respect for themselves and for others.
And do it out of love and not out of fear.
Absolutely. So, you know, if anyone's hearing this and they're like, wow, I want to work with Becky, I want to work with Emily, I'll work with both of them. We want to set things up so that it's affordable for you. We will have in the show notes a link to my website. You can contact me, have a free consultation call. What about you, Becky?
Yeah, so we're planning on starting a group program in June. And I love group programs because women just love to grow in community and learn in community. And you're going to be with women who are going through similar things as well. So I'm really excited about that. You can also work with me one-on-one if you prefer. And it would be a 3 to 6 month program depending on what you need, and we'll meet for a discovery call and we'll just find out where you're at. How long have you been dealing with your health issues? What have you already tried that's not worked, and things like that. And so we go dive into functional labs based on what you need. And we also work on diet and lifestyle, and we develop a protocol for you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Becky, this has been amazing. I love when we get to talk together about this stuff. And I really hope that this has blessed everyone who's listened today. So thank you for listening, and keep an eye out for our next podcast.
Yeah, we can't wait to see you guys again, and let us know what you think.